Vintage lunchboxes are perfect pieces of nostalgia, little artifacts from our past that were packed full of food then and packed full of memories now. My name is Steve, I'm one of the collector guys, and this is my own vintage lunchbox collection. Collector guys. Everybody remembers the lunchbox they had as a kid. This is mine, a 1968 Popeye with a Blondie thermos that my mom bought secondhand at a thrift store. I now have over 200 boxes in my collection, most of which are on display throughout our house. Some aren't because, frankly, they made some pretty ugly boxes. Also, I do have the bottle, or what you probably call the thermos, for most of my boxes. I just keep them inside the pails for the sake of space. We're going to start here in our living room, which we call the Mid-Century Room, or what you would probably call Grandma's place. Everything in this room is from the 50s, a little bit from the early 60s. We're starting here in the Mid-Century Room because the 1950s was a very important time in the history of vintage metal lunchboxes. And we're going to start with this box that's on top of this vintage TV. It's a Hopalong Cassidy from the early 1950s. It's important because this Hopalong Cassidy box was the very first pop culture lunchbox. So every metal vintage lunchbox out there owes something to this Hopalong Cassidy box. This is another lunchbox from the early 1950s, Tom Corbett Space Cadet. Very popular character during that time. This box, they started doing actual lithography on the side of the metal there instead of using a sticker. Over here, we have Davy Crockett, another huge character star of that time. And then, of course, next to him, Roy Rogers. Roy Rogers was Thermos's answer to Hopalong Cassidy. They sold millions and millions of these lunchboxes, which always kind of cracks me up because you'll see these sold online as being rare when there actually were probably more of these than a lot of the other ones that came out many years later. Now we're in our family room, and I have a number of vintage lunchboxes in this room among other collectibles that we have. So as you can see over this doorway here, we have a number of very desirable lunchboxes, starting with Adam Ant, the first cartoon I ever remember watching on Saturday mornings when I was a kid. Have Gun Will Travel, classic Western. One of my favorite movies when I was a child, Dr. Dolittle. Another great cartoon, a lot of memories, the Harlem Globetrotters. And who could forget the Wild Wild West? Bobby Sherman, 60s, early 70s teen idol. I love this box. It's just a quirky box. It's designed for the times. It's got a bottle that has his stats on it, where you can find out where he was born, what color his eyes are, how tall he is, and how much he weighs. And who could forget the 60s comedy classic, Get Smart? On top of the entertainment center here, I have a whole bunch of Western lunchboxes. These are mostly from the 50s and 60s. There's some classic TV shows up here like Bonanza, Daniel Boone, and Gunsmoke. And some not so classic shows like Chuck Connor's Cowboy in Africa. To the kids of the 50s and 60s, cowboys were their superheroes. They idolized these characters. This was reflected in the popularity of the lunchboxes during that time. Also over here are two of my very favorite lunchboxes. The first one is this NFL quarterback, and it's from the early 60s, and what I like about it, it is not generic in any form. It is actual Packers versus the Bears on one side, the Browns versus the New York Giants on the other. And around the edge, there are a number of vintage uniforms from the teams during that time. It's just a really, really cool box and just makes you feel like the 60s. Also over here, we have another one of my favorite boxes, which is the Universal Movie Monster Box. If you grew up like me watching creature features in the early 70s, these monsters are, I know they're classic, but they're truly classic to me because I remember watching all these movies. Frankenstein, The Bride of Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman, Creature from the Black Lagoon. It just doesn't get any better than this. It's one of my favorites and is in great shape. Just an awesome lunchbox. Around the room, there are boxes here and there that are part of other collections. Up top here, I have the $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman, along with their two lunchboxes. Also, my wife, who collects Barbie, has a very extensive Barbie lunchbox collection, and here that is, including this metal one here in the middle that is actually kind of hard to find, and it's from Canada. Another one of my favorite lunchboxes is this Evel Knievel box, which is part of my vintage Evel Knievel toy collection, and I just love it. It just reminds me of when I was a kid. And up over here, over this window, we have a shelf of some really nice boxes. I like displaying them like this because it becomes part of the decor of the room instead of just having boxes everywhere. But up on the shelf, we have some classic TV shows: Hee Haw, The Flying Nun, Gomer Pyle. We have this nice 1950s Steve Canyon box. And over here on the end, we have one of the quirkiest TV shows for kids ever, Lancelot Link, Secret Chimp. Here above the fireplace, we have two more of my very favorites. Seems like I got a lot of favorites, but I do because I love these things. They're both from children's programs from the early 60s. First is Fireball XL5, which is a beautiful box. This is in great shape, especially for as old as it is. The bottle is really nice, and this is just beautiful. And the other is Mike Mercury's Supercar Orbital Food Container. And again, this is another beautiful lunchbox. And the thing that's really neat about this box is actually the box is on the box. If you look right there in the space car, you'll see this lunchbox. And actually on the side here, there is a character eating lunch in this lunchbox. So that's the only lunchbox I have where the lunchbox is on the lunchbox. The last lunchbox I want to show you in this room is this Beatles Yellow Submarine from 1968. Now this box was the second box I ever had in my life. Again, I got it in the 60s, early 70s. My mom got it at a thrift store. And this is the box, this is probably my most valuable box, but it's also, the story behind this is I used to take my lunch to work in the 80s in this box. Now, you would find lunch boxes in thrift stores. I mean, you could find them everywhere. They weren't like they are now where they're such an in-demand collectible. But I remember taking this to work. I was in the lunchroom, I was eating my sandwich, and the guy was sitting there going, you know, that lunchbox right there is worth about 200 bucks. Now this is like 1987. And I'm like, wow, this thing's worth 200 bucks? So from that point, I went to brown bagging it, and I took this home and put it on a shelf. So here we are in my office, and this room is crazy. I have a lot of different collections in here, including a number of vintage lunchboxes. One of my cooler displays is the front of this desk. In order to be economical in space and show off as many boxes as I could, I actually built shelves that go on the front of my desk, so it gives the illusion of a desk made out of lunchboxes. There are 28 different lunchboxes on the front of this desk, including some of my favorites, a lot of the superhero boxes that I love, my Star Wars, some vintage TV shows, the one vinyl box that I own. This is from the 50s. I'm not a big fan of vinyl, but you know what? They're hard to find because vinyl did not hold up over time. There's some vintage cartoons. There's even a rare box from Mexico down here at the bottom too. So this is very, very cool, and you won't see a whole lot of displays like this. This part of the room is all Kiss collectibles, and part of that is my 1970s Kiss lunchbox, which is a very desirable box. A lot of people love to have that box. It was a holy grail for me for the longest time, and I'm really glad I have it. Up top here, we have some domed lunchboxes, and below that we have vintage TV shows like Flipper, Rat Patrol, Mork and Mindy, Happy Days, HR Puff and Stuff. And here we are in front of the largest display in the entire house. In these shelves are about 60 vintage lunchboxes. These are some of my favorite lunchboxes. I've got a great collection of Disney boxes here, highlighted by two Disneyland boxes, one from 1957 and one from 1960. And then there are quite a few classic TV shows from the 70s and 80s, some movies in here. We got this beautiful Hot Wheels box, which is a classic. Up here we have Rambo, the last metal lunchbox ever produced. And in here we have the Brady Bunch and the Partridge Family, which were my Friday nights when I was a kid growing up. And one of my very favorites of my collection, this box right here, The Exciting World of Metrics. How this came to be, I have no idea, other than maybe a marketing ploy to get kids on board with the new metric system. And last, I have one plastic lunchbox in my collection, and that is this one right here. This is a prop from the TV show Sons of Anarchy, and it was used by Jack Teller's son Abel in a number of scenes in the last season. These lunchboxes reflected the pop culture of the time, which is one of the reasons we love them so much. Not to mention their beautiful mini works of art which just look cool sitting up on a shelf. Thanks for watching. Click that subscribe button on the left for more great Collector Guys videos. And always remember, surround yourself with what you love.